Okay, I'm going to be replacing my exhaust today on my CRF250L. I'm going to be replacing the header and the exhaust can. First thing, there's two bolts and your heat shield comes off. There's a little tab right there. And then there are these two bolts here to remove the factory heat shield. And with the big gun exhaust, you can reuse the factory heat shield on the header, but not on the exhaust can. Next we have a bolt here and a bolt here that we need to remove, and then there is a bolt on the clamp there that we need to loosen, and we can remove the exhaust can. You use a 12mm wrench and socket to do this. Next we need to remove these two acorn nuts off of the factory header to remove that pipe. Once your factory header is removed, install a new crush gasket, which is this little orange thing here, and then feed the output side of your header in between your frame, and then bolt it back up just like the factory header. Next we will install the exhaust can in place of the factory one, and we will reuse the two factory mounting bolts to hold this in. It's important to leave all these bolts for the header all the way back to the can loose until you have this one tightened. Because this doesn't come with a clamp and it's just slip fit, this is the most important one. Once you have that one tight, you can kind of move things around to get it all aligned correctly with that rear bolt and the header bolts. Remember to use the torque specs that the manual shows for all your exhaust bolts, because it should be the same for the aftermarket system. Once you have everything installed and tightened up, we need to reinstall the factory heat shield on the header with the original factory bolts. Okay, with the factory heat shield installed, that completes this installation. They do have a U.S. Forestry approved spark arrestor and a quiet insert available for this exhaust, which I will put on eventually, and I'll take some soundbite clips and put that together on the end of this video. So the only thing left to do now is start it up and run my hand around all the places where there are joints in the system to make sure it's not leaking. Now if you do this quickly, it won't get hot, you won't burn your hand, but that's the best way to do it, to check for leaks. If you do have a leak, you'll need to loosen everything back up, readjust it, and clamp it back down again. So fairly straightforward, simple installation for this exhaust system. It's a big gun header and a big gun Evo R exhaust can. To install the vortex insert in the exhaust, we need to remove the three bolts that hold the end cap on. Okay, actually this bounces around a little bit. My mistake. Put the spacer washer on it. Slide that into place. Drop your end cap. But without that spacer washer, this bounces around a little bit, so you do need to have the spacer on here to get this seated correctly. Okay, I have decided that this vortex insert, although it does quiet the exhaust down some, it doesn't quiet it down enough. So what I've done is come up with a system, not really a system, a little part, to quiet it down even more. Now, because it's this size, it's 1 3/4 inches outside and it's 3/4 inches inside. As you can see, maybe not, depending on the lighting. I have enough room to spot weld this little washer I built onto here. Now I don't know if you can get washers this size. I just cut this out of sheet metal. Just going to spot weld it right on the end there, and what that does is creates a little more back pressure, so it quiets it down a little bit. Now how I tested that was I actually took miscellaneous electrical conduit connectors I had and some sockets out of my toolbox, and I figured out about what size hole I needed to make this quiet but still deep and throaty like a dirt bike should sound. So this is what I came up with. 1 3/4, 3/4, and we'll spot weld it real quick. See how it turns out. And there we go. Well, it's apart again. What I've done now is I welded that washer completely in instead of spot welding it, and I've added a pipe. Now that's not how it's going to be finished. I got to adjust it a little more, but the reason for that pipe is because when I had just a washer on there, it really snapped kind of loud. It took a lot of the bass, the real heavy thrumming sound out of it, I guess you'd call it, and it just made it a higher pitch kind of snapping sound. But with this pipe, hopefully it's not so bad. I'm going to put it in, ride it around, and try it.